All right, so we're back. We're doing it. I kind of promised myself that I would try and follow up the first episode or recording as quickly as possible, the second one, and that was really just to kind of get into the habit, regardless of if I had any good idea to do this or not, or kind of had an idea what to talk about. But the upside is I didn't really have an idea of what to talk about in the first one, and that happened. So no harm in trying, and here we are. But I do think I gotta maybe walk back the advice I shared in the first podcast about lists. Newsflash, lists are back. I was driving to the gym this morning, and I coach early morning classes Tuesdays and Thursdays at CrossFit Mafia in Erie, Colorado. Shout out CrossFit Mafia. And if you're not having a great day and you want to feel more important, you just go into a public place and just say like, shout out so-and-so. You'll immediately feel better, make you feel cooler if people are listening to you. Anyway, driving to the gym early morning. It's great thinking time, just chilling. Usually don't listen to a lot of music, maybe a little bit of news because I'm old now. But usually just like some time to reflect, think about things. So naturally I was thinking about some topics for the podcast. Where could this thing go? What could we do with it? And I had all kinds of great ideas. I had like 10 miles of good ideas, and I got to the gym and I got out of the truck and I didn't write any of them down. I forgot all of them. So wish I had a list. And, but I did remember one idea and I really liked it. That's what I'm going to talk about right now. And I think maybe that's part of the lesson, which is if you got a lot of stuff in your head and you only remember one or two things because you didn't write it all down, you only remember one or two things, maybe it's because the other stuff wasn't that important and you did remember the one or two things that were important. So I stand on it. Fuck lists. But what I did want to share was something that a friend of mine and I talked about a really long time ago. And this was from somebody I really respect and admired, just listening to and kind of seeing his perspective on the world. This came from a conversation I had with Michael Dalton. And he's like a man of many talents, designer, videographer, editor, an artiste, as they say in the biz. And I think if you want to check him out, I think his Instagram's Michael is Hustle. And then his website is hustlemedia.co. So shout out Hustle Media. But I met him through just competing and training in CrossFit and bumped into him a handful of times. He actually did a really awesome video on my mom, and I know that means something a little different nowadays in the age of OnlyFans. No, I'm just kidding. He did it was for CrossFit, guys. He did a really cool documentary on my mom to kind of tell her story and journey through fitness. And still to this day, for obvious reasons, that's one of my favorite videos. Because if you've ever had somebody you love and care about, see them kind of take control of their own life through fitness and wellness, it's like the best gift you could ever get. So not to get too sappy, but anyway, probably couldn't thank Dalton enough for that. But one of the things we were talking about just on a random phone conversation once, and it's stuck with me and I think about it a lot, which basically he said to me, we were kind of talking about like life, development of life, how we change, things we focus on as we get older, what we stop focusing on. He said, what would your 12-year-old self think looking at your life now? Would it be cool? What parts of your life would be cool to them? And I think this is like such a great thought experiment. And I try to think about it as much as possible. And as probably many of my friends will tell you, they'd be like, oh yeah, his 12-year-old self doesn't need to look ahead to his life because he is his 12-year-old self. I pretty much still dress like the same, definitely have the same diet, different sleeping routine, a few more responsibilities, but not many. The reason I like this advice is I think, when you're younger, there's just, especially if you grow up in like a pretty healthy environment, when you're younger, there's just like an infinite world of possibilities and things to do. I was just talking to another friend recently, and one of her daughters is like really into space. And it's just always amazing, I think, if you remember back when you were little, that thing or two you were obsessed with. Like I would have killed to be a marine biologist, and I knew everything about it, way more than I know now. And it's just amazing times when you bump into kids like that and you chat with them about it, and they just know an infinite amount of material about this like one thing. And that changes sometimes, not always. It changes as you get older. You have life experiences. Logic takes its grasp over your brain. Sometimes for good, sometimes maybe not. And you start to close a lot of doors of possibility that certainly could stay open and otherwise might have been open. If you didn't have that all that context of experience piled on top. And obviously, there's certainly moments where that's good. But I think about this one a lot. And I know I definitely found myself for the last couple of years of my life just like doing things I thought, I was supposed to, or that are, necessary to do when you hit a certain age. And the more I thought about this, I was like, damn, 12-year-old me would be like, he'd meet me and say, whoa, you're boring. And he'd be out. And I've definitely tried harder to change that, both just in like activity, but also perception of the world. I do really like a lot of things. And I think like 99% of what I experience and stumble on in the world is really cool. And I think sometimes that probably comes across as like I'm like faking it or just being facetious, but it is sincere. And it's because it's something I remember having growing up. Like the world is just such an insanely interesting place. And there's so much coolness happening when you look for it. Lots of shittiness too, but there you go. That's the grip of the logical brain. Just saying like, oh yeah, well you got to balance out any good thing you talk about with the bad things you talk about. But one thing that really stuck out to me is as I've kind of like developed my relationship with fitness, younger, competing in CrossFit, all that stuff, everything's about the numbers and the PRs, which is fantastic. And I think it absolutely should be. And sometimes still it is. But like for the most part now, as I've gotten older, it's definitely more about basically, can I do a workout with my wife and my dogs? And if I can't do that, I don't really want to do it. And a friend of mine who's a long distance athlete sent me a video the other day because I've been talking about how I want to like do more like running, skiing, biking with your dog on a harness, joring. And he sent me this video of this young lady doing it cross-country skiing. I've never cross-country skied before. I've always liked the gravity-propelled aspect of downhill skiing, but man, I have never wanted to cross-country ski more in my life. And I can think of, as far as fitness goes, if I spent a year in the summertime biking with my dog, pulling me on the bike, my wife is there, our other dog is there, doing that running, doing that skiing, gosh, that's all I want to do. And I think my 12-year-old self would think that'd be pretty cool. There's lots of other things too. So it's not really advice, but I think it's a cool thought experiment. Like if your 12-year-old self, you meet them, what do they say to you? You're lame. And maybe they're fired up too, which is also awesome. So shout out to those people whose 12-year-old selves are fired up. That's all I had today. Should have written more things down on a list. But where does this thing go from here? I'm not sure. I've had a lot of ideas. I'm hoping the generous people out there in the internet universe will leave all sorts of little tips and clues and breadcrumbs of where this thing goes next. Some of the big ideas I've had is obviously interviews. I feel like I've been insanely fortunate in my life to just really meet people who observe and experience life in a way that I admire and in a way that I feel like they've done it better than I have. And I've just had the chance to take great advice and insight, kind of like the advice I shared right here or thought I've shared right here. And I want to share that with more people. So that's something. But I also don't want this to just be, another podcast with 2-3 hour long interviews. So some of that. I don't want this to be an everyday journal podcast, but we are headed down that road fast right now. Another thing I thought about, which I thought would be cool, was like doing like a seasonality to it, like having an arc to each season. So maybe one series of episodes or season is focused around like my reflections on training and competing and my time spent doing that. I feel like there were some like really good tangible lessons learned that came out of that and just how they did or didn't apply to the rest of my life. One, like a season of interviews, maybe a season of like journal stuff like this, just kind of like Deep Thoughts by Jack Handey. If you don't know, look it up. It's fantastic. But those are a couple of ideas. I'm sure we'll figure it out as we go, or Maybe we won't. And my other goal today, other than recording this, was to make it to 10 minutes. So that was 10:04. All right. Talk to you soon.